Hello, everyone. My name is Eddie Bolen. I'm a pastor at Midway United Methodist Church. I'm also a pastor at Edgewater United Methodist Church. I want to thank you so much for taking some time and for watching this video. This video is going to be part of a Bible study that I'm offering on Wednesdays. Each Wednesday, you'll find a Bible study based on, what's been recently 1 Timothy. So this particular Bible study is going to be 1 Timothy chapter 3, but if you'd like to find some other studies from 1 Timothy chapter 1, chapter 2. That's what I basically have been doing, is just inviting you to take your Bibles and to study in the book of 1 Timothy. 1 Timothy is a New Testament book. It's later in the New Testament. And 1 Timothy, along with 2 Timothy and the book of Titus, are considered pastorals. They are particular letters that the Apostle Paul was writing to particular individuals. You may guess it. 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy are written by the Apostle Paul to Timothy, and then the Apostle Paul writes to Titus in the book of Titus, but together they're considered pastorals. This particular one in 1 Timothy, Paul is in Macedonia at this time and is encouraging Timothy. Timothy really hasn't had much of a leadership role. A couple of places you'll find in the book of 1 Timothy where Paul will talk about Timothy and he will call him my son. A couple of places where he will talk about, don't let anyone despise you for your youth, for your young age. So we have this. And so this is the really fascinating part about this, is that in 1 Timothy, what we really get to see and what we get to dive into is to see how do leaders talk to each other? How does one leader who is really established and also writing close to the end of his life. The Apostle Paul is just a few years, writes this letter just a few years before he is executed, before the Apostle Paul dies. And so how do you explain leading this community of faith? About another really interesting thing about 1 Timothy is really about 65 years after the death and the resurrection of Jesus. How do you explain this faith to a leader who is going to be leading a group of community in Ephesus? So Paul and Timothy are separated. In fact, Paul, the Apostle Paul, will talk about, I hope that I can come to you. I hope that I can be around you. I hope that I can be part of this. But he's not. And so we are left with this. We are left with this letter that we have. So what I want to do is I want to invite you to do exactly what I do, is to pray, to seek God's grace, and then to just dive in and start reading the Bible. And I will say this, that as you turn to 1 Timothy chapter 3, you may be tempted. You may be tempted because the first words say, the saying is sure, or, maybe a little bit more accurately, the saying is faithful. That's the original Greek. The saying is faithful. Whoever aspires to the office of bishop desires a noble task. And so what you'll notice is that immediately, there's about 3 sections that you can divide all of 1 Timothy into. Then 1 Timothy chapter 3. Yeah, it's a fun book to look at, and it's a fun book to study. So I'll try to slow down, let my excitement not get the best of me. But 1 Timothy chapter 3, starting at verse 1, is where the Apostle Paul will raise the idea of offices in the church, the office of bishop. Then at verse 8, you will notice, so for those next 7 verses, then you will see bishop. Then at verse 8, deacons, the office of deacons, what does the office of deacon look like? And then the last part of it, verse 14, where the Apostle Paul says, I hope to come to you soon. So he's saying this to Timothy. I hope that I'll be able to be around you very soon. And so you may say, well, Paul's writing to Timothy, so I can appreciate the fact that Paul is wanting to be around Timothy, so I can get that. But you know what? Not sure if I'm excited or really not ready to sign up for the office or the role of bishop, and I'm not really excited about signing up for the office of deacon. I get it. I understand. But as you do that, as you take a look at the office of bishop and the office of deacon, what I want to do and encourage you about, and I will say this, I can say this from the very beginning, is that as you take a look at the office of bishop, there's not much that we can really talk about that is definitive, but I can say this, that as you take a look at the office of bishop that is in 1 Timothy chapter 3, that is, according to 1 Timothy chapter 3, there is, I can happily report to you, that according to the biblical text, that a bishop is not forced to move only diagonally in spite of the rules of a chessboard. So let's dive right in. It may be tempting, as I said, to move quickly past 1 Timothy chapter 3 with all the talk as regarding bishops and deacons, and it's easy to say, you know what, that's not for me. I'm not aspiring to that role. I'm not taking on that task, as noble as a bishop may be. That's not somewhere there I want to be. But kind of what Paul is getting at here is, and what you'll see is much more of this later, is that before you can say it's really not for me, I don't aspire to be a bishop, I don't aspire to be a deacon, I want you to reflect on this question, where do you want to go in your life right now? And this is one of the things that I encourage you to do as you begin to study the Bible, is before you begin to study the Bible, to pray. Ask God to open your eyes. Ask God to give you ears that you would hear. If you want to do exactly what Jesus said to do that. To look and say, ask God to give you eyes that you may see, ask God to give you ears that you may hear. Oftentimes this is my own personal prayer as I study the Bible, as I get into it. So in this essence, as you are beginning to study 1 Timothy chapter 3, again, with no expectations of becoming bishop or becoming a deacon, I want you to reflect on this question: where do you want to go in life right now? And there's two options. There's two options that emerge. And so just reflect and seek God and ask God to lead you as you study. Open yourself up to God's lead. And those two options, the first option is, do you need to have a really big picture in your life of where you need to get a handle on what's happening and oversee what's next for you? Are you finding yourself that as you begin this Bible study, and don't overthink it, just kind of go with your gut feeling as you're coming here and as you're focusing on this video and with your scriptures in front of you, and say, do I need to have this big picture? Do I need to just kind of oversee where I'm at in life right now? What's going on in my life right now? Is that something that I need to do? And if it is a place where you need to have some oversight, when you need to have a really big picture of what's happening in your life, then you are in that bishop, or in the Greek, episkopos is where we get the word episcopal, the Episcopal Church, for example. But you are in that bishop role, because what a bishop is a bishop is an overseer. As an overseer, I know this about... in my own personal life, as soon as Russia began to invade Ukraine, and then as we moved more and more into what is now a war, I looked to bishops in Ukraine. I looked for bishops in Europe to sort of, guide my own understanding about what's happening on the ground. Bishops are overseers, and in fact, some of the first reports that I read, as far as connected with the church, were from bishops, were from the Bishop of Ukraine, who also, in the United Methodist Church, also oversees parts of Russia too. So it's a unique place for there. But think about that. If you're coming to this Bible study and say, you know what, I need to have some insight. I need to have this oversight in my own life. That's what I need from God right now. That's the direction God's sending me right now. Then that bishop, those first 7 verses, really applicable in your life. Option 2, and you may guess it, is deacon. And that is starting at verse 8. Ask yourself again to reflect and ask, for God's lead, and do it quickly. Don't overthink it. Just kind of follow your gut. Just go with your gut in this, right? And say, right now in this area of my life, I need to really begin to incorporate some intentional service for me, or some intentional service for my family, my church, or even my community. I need to serve. That's one of those places that I need to move in my own life right now, is that I need to serve. So either I need this kind of oversight, bishop, or I need this kind of service, this diaconal kind of responsibility. That's the Greek word. That's the original word of verse 8, deacons. So this kind of diaconal, this kind of service, and both of those roles in the church are ordained roles. There is an order of bishops. There's an order of deacons. They're both roles that are examined. They're both roles that people take ordination vows into. But for you, think about this, and I will say this: if you're leaning toward that diaconal role, if you're leaning toward that service role, I'm a pastor. I always look for people who are eager to serve. So if you can't find a place to serve, send me your email. Let me know your phone number. I'll be glad to text, talk, just however we could do that. And I will say this too, that oftentimes it seems that service appears to be the primary mission of the church, but what 1 Timothy 3 does is expand on that vision and says, there's more to the church than only serving. So overseer or bishop, service our deacon, this overseer, this bishop, this episcopacy that the bishop has, or this deacon or diaconal. So just take a minute and just focus and say, this is what I need right now. This is what I need to experience right now. Well, the reason we can study 1 Timothy in this way and to think about our own roles, think about, our own lives together, is because what you will see, that the reason we can really apply 1 Timothy into our lives is because what you will see is that the saying is sure. That's where Paul begins. This is verse 1. The saying is sure. Whoever aspires to the office of bishop desires a noble task. Now, a bishop must be above reproach. So notice this. Now, a bishop must be above reproach, married only once, temperate, sensible, respectable, hospitable, and an apt teacher. So if you strike that last thing about an apt teacher, just think about that. A person must be above reproach, married only once, temperate, sensible, respectable, and hospitable. And then he continues, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well, keeping his children submissive, respectful in every way. I have 5 children. In my own life, I will tell you that I always do very well at that. I really don't. There are lots of times where I miss the mark on that. For someone does not know how to manage his own household, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may be puffed up with conceit and fall into condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders so that he might not fall into disgrace and the snare of the devil. I do want to point out one of those things, particularly in verse 2, married only once. This is the Apostle Paul is a man of his times. Also, as you are reading these letters, we don't know what Timothy was asking Paul. We don't know the kind of internal conversations they have. Maybe perhaps Timothy wrote a letter to Paul. We don't have access to that, so we kind of had to reconstruct it. But there are, in Paul's times, as well as Timothy's times, there were Greek marriage contracts that have emerged that show the importance. And, it may not be, we think about licenses when we get married, but there were contracts, actual contracts over there for Greek contracts. But they stipulated, no wife, only one wife, no mistress. And so maybe perhaps there's something going on there. Jesus in Matthew chapter 19 talks about divorce because, and we'll really emphasize that point, just because you're attracted to someone doesn't mean that you can divorce your current spouse so that you could be with that other person and therefore fulfill the law of Moses. So there could be something that's going on here that we really don't know, but married only once. But other than that, if you notice again, above reproach, temperate, sensible, respectable, not a drunkard, not a lover of money, someone that is able to manage their own household. What these qualifications are is that these qualifications are above reproach, temperate, sensible, respectable, hospitable. These are the virtues that represent the ideal person as an overseer. Kind of these hinge virtues that hold up an exemplary life. It's a life that could be lived as an example by other people too. And this is why I invited you to consider your own place right now as you oversee your own life, as you begin to imagine how you can you begin to imagine how you could incorporate these virtues like above reproach, temperate, sensible, respectable. How can they help you to gain or oversee and take that next step in your own life? Notice there are things that you must be as a bishop. There's things that you must be as an overseer, and things that you're not. You are someone that is above reproach. You are someone who manages your own household well, but you are not a drunkard. You're not violent. You're not quarrelsome. You are not a lover of money. It's important to understand who we are as well as important to understand who we are not. And particularly in that role of bishop and overseer, once we have that oversight in our own lives, it helps for us to clearly define, this is who I am and this is who I am not. Just think, as a leader in the community of faith, what Paul offers is ideal, is virtuous aspects of this role. It's not the kind of structure that you may think similar to a manual. Paul is not offering us a manual about how to construct a church, how to plant a church. That's not what this is. You do not find these specific roles about a bishop, that a bishop must preside at Easter service. A bishop must be the one who is appointing pastors. A bishop must be the teacher, or must maintain overseeing, must be a teacher on specific high holy days, nor should a bishop be the one who is overseeing the distribution of alms to the poor. No, is a virtuous life, is an ideal life. You will also notice about the Apostle Paul that there is this understanding about, how is the world looking at us? How is the rest of the world, how do they see us as we come together? What is our responsibility as a bishop, and how will the world see us? And so in all these virtues, remember the office begins with a person who is saying yes to Jesus, becoming a disciple, hearing God's call upon their life, coming out of a culture that is dominated in Ephesus by a cult that is devoted to Diana or Artemis, connected with fertility. And in other words, what Paul is offering in this list of virtues of what you are as well as what you are not, is that what's going to make you leave this world and devote all of your energy, all your work, all of your love as a bishop or an overseer. And that's something that I'd like to do with you, to ask you, what is it that would make you do this? In oversight of your own life, what is going to make you devote all your energy, all your work, all your love to oversee where God is calling you in this next section of your life? Whoever aspires to bishop. Also, I just want to touch on that as we begin. Whoever aspires to be bishop. Not saying that people are lining up with images of becoming bishops. This imagination that they have of becoming bishop. Offices oftentimes were not sought. Culturally, this was not. They were not sought. People ideally, the people that are around, they would ideally see these kinds of gifts of temperance, sensibility, or notice the kind of out-teaching that a particular person was offering, and then is recognized among the community, and they sort of push them. They kind of guide them. Push is a terrible word. I shouldn't have said that. That's not in my notes. That's completely off the words. But they encourage them. It's not push, it's not force. Although historically you will see this. You will see alliances among bishops and overseers throughout the life of the church. I'm thinking particularly right before the Reformation, and even right after the Reformation. You'll see this push among bishops like this. But there's encouragement that is there. They would see those gifts among bishops and then encourage them. You should come into this, but not an aspiration like, that's who I'm going to be when I grow up. It's not what Paul is getting at. It's not what Paul is talking about. Notice it's not a recent convert. May experience this kind of conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. That's what Paul says. As an overseer of other people's lives, can you just imagine how dangerous that position could be, mixed with conceit and arrogance? And Paul says it's so dangerous that you will fall into the condemnation of the devil. And as countercultural as it may seem now, disgrace could end your public life in the eyes of your community. Stark warning at the end about falling into the conceit and being covered by the devil. So you've waited patiently now for the second act, the act of service of our diaconal ministry. Both bishop and deacon, this is something that begins at verse 8, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 8. And so as you come here, both bishop and deacon are ordained orders in the community of Jesus. And for our own Bible study and application, if you are considering acts of serving in this season of life that you find yourself in, toward your family, toward your friends, toward your community, then you are on that diaconal path. You're in that role of a deacon. Deacons likewise likewise, and notice this, deacons likewise, they must be serious, not double-tongued. Don't talk about people. Don't talk behind people's back. Not indulging in much wine. Now notice that the office of bishop, the office of oversight, you know that you're temperate. You're not a drunkard. But here, not indulging in much wine, not greedy for money. Both offices. It seems to be the strong concern that Paul has about those who are greedy for money. They must hold fast to the mystery of faith with a clear conscience. That is, the resurrection, that mystery of faith, as it is recognized that God raised Jesus from the dead, that you have been raised up, that you will be, at the end of your life, eternally you will live in the kingdom of heaven, and you must hold that mystery. Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. That mystery of faith, that you must hold that mystery with a clear conscience. Verse 10, and let them first be tested. There is some kind of examination. I know in my particular tradition in the United Methodist Church, there is. As you aspire and as you become a deacon, it begins in your local church, then goes out to your district, then goes out to the wider annual conference. But there's examinations among people that you know and love, and then it just moves out. It spreads out to further and further leaders. But there is this kind of examination that is they must be first tested. Then if they prove themselves blameless, let them serve as deacons. Let them serve as deacons. A kind of play in the Greek there, because a deacon is by its very nature service. So let them serve as they serve. Verse 11, women likewise must be serious, not slanderers, but temperate, faithful in all things. And so this encouragement about women holding these serious, not slanderers, but temperate, faithful in all things, lifting up the virtuous, noble characters of women that are there. Let deacons be married only once. Notice that again and again. A deacon can't take on a mistress. It's similar to the bishop. You can't do that. Let them manage their children, their households well. Similar to what it is for the bishop. For those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves and great boldness and faith as in Christ Jesus. And I love this quote from Zig Ziglar, who says this: you cannot become what you need to be by remaining what you are. And I think for both bishops and for deacons that Paul does an excellent job of seeing this. This is who you can become in this place that you may be exemplary in some of these characteristics, but imagine this, and putting these noble virtues in front of everyone, in front of the whole community, you're able to see that this is who we are becoming as followers of Jesus Christ. What makes you leave behind? And another big question that is emerging: what makes you leave behind a pagan environment and culture to lead as an overseer, as a bishop, or as a servant, as a deacon? What is worth my own energy? What is worth all my work, my love here in Ephesus to come out of this culture, this pagan environment, and to live in this way? Well, hopefully you can see how useful 1 Timothy is, chapter 3, in your own seasons of overseeing and serving. I want to thank you so much for taking some time and for studying, and I want to pray that God will richly bless you in all those places of oversight in your own life, as well as in all those places of service in your own life. Well, thanks again so much for watching, and may God's blessings be with all of you.